Hi and welcome. It's Chris Doughty with the SI Experience here for all our investors, sourcing agents and colleagues. And a big welcome today. We're very excited to be discussing a very important topic. We have got a lot of power teams who work with us, with our investors. And today we've got a very important one, which is a solicitor. The solicitor I will introduce shortly is Andrew Garvie, who is a senior partner at JMW Solicitors, one of the power team members. And we really want to get insights as to how it's in fact affecting the property market currently. And more importantly, what does it mean to you as an investor, and how is this, all of this scenario at the moment, affecting the legal side of it? So I will bring in Andrew. Andrew, how are you?
Hello, Chris. You all right?
Well,
greetings from Manchester here. We're all doing well here at the minute, despite lockdown. But
sunny Manchester, as they call it, right?
Yeah, it's about 20 degrees, something like that. Very sunny, all looking good out there, but very quiet on the streets.
And I think I'd like to point out that it actually is not like that normally in Manchester. I think it has the highest rainfall, right, categorically.
We are famous for our sunshine. Sorry, I mean our weather, and it isn't necessarily the sunshine, but it has lots of good things, including our illustrious football team.
I haven't even started yet, and he's got the Manchester United stuff in already. I love it.
Yeah,
so we can safely say that you're a glory seeker in the history days, whereas now the Blues are dominating.
We don't like to discuss them, but no, there's room for two teams in Manchester, one big one and another. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant! I love it. I won't get it started. I'm sure we've got a lot of people. We've got a lot of people on the line from Asia who obviously have got a massive fan base of Manchester United. So I'm pretty sure you'll have a lot of supporters in that, Andrew. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So Andrew, thank you for today. Really appreciate your time. As I say, an important member of our power team, working with a lot of investors both locally and internationally. And really, you know, obviously in these times at the moment, I think I've seen a lot of people going on webinars, etc. Individual trainers giving their own opinions, etc. And again, we don't like to do that here at SR. We very much like to, as I say, get the people in the know. And with you yourself, you know, being a partner at JMW of residential conveyancing and being seeing the market as it is a huge law firm. Wanted to really ask you some serious questions. I mean, just for a minute or two, just tell us, you yourself, how long have you been, what do you do? And more importantly, we don't need to go about the football team thing, but what do you do? And how are you in the process for the investors on here? Why are you an important part of that cog?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been practicing now for 20 plus years. I won't go into how many exactly, but yeah, quite an experience.
You don't look it.
Quite a lot of experience there, Chris. Hopefully, so we've got a nice sized team here at the firm. I head up the team, and we do residential sales, purchases for investors, for homeowners, refinancing properties. So if you've bought the property and you want to get a better product on it and change the mortgage on it, we do that quite regularly.
Yeah.
So lots of different transfers of equity where you maybe bought the property, you want to bring your wife on, your husband on, your partner for tax reasons. You might want to sort of spread the ownership between the family. So lots of things like that going on. But in terms of what we can bring to your client base and the investors out there, we know the market, we're familiar with all the lenders, so hopefully we can bring our know-how to the party and help everybody along. But yeah, it's an interesting time at the minute, though.
Very much so, and I think Andrew, we have our investor clinics, etc., and we've had a lot of questions, and I think for me, what I really want to do is sort of put you on the spot and really ask you, a few highly important questions which affect anybody, I guess, sort of looking at the UK market in itself. And our first question, really is, what are the impacts of Brexit? Is one of the first questions, which seems like a long time ago, considering where we are now. And then if you can actually comment on that and comment on very much so from the legal side and what you're seeing in transaction volumes, what is the impact of COVID and the challenges that people are facing, investors are facing, but the market's facing.
Sure. Well, look, taking Brexit to start with, it does, as you said, Chris, it does seem like a long time ago that Brexit was first came onto our screens. But I think with the general election, that took a lot of the uncertainty away, and in a lot of people's minds, the pathway to Brexit is now being set, should we say. But there's still some legislation to go, and whether it's slightly delayed by COVID, I don't know, but it's on schedule for the end of the year. Obviously, there's a lot of trade deals to be done, but I think in terms of investors and clients, that they certainly have been dissuaded by the Brexit pathway. It's certainly established, and should see, we should see it through to a conclusion by the end of the year, maybe into 21 possibly. But certainly that isn't a factor, should we say, in people's minds, from what we're seeing in terms of investment. Now,
and that's just to ask you there. So that's on the Brexit side, which obviously was a hot topic, and really affected, I'd say, the confidence in the market itself. Was something going to happen? Was it not going to happen? And now we've got that clarity, which I think we've been preaching, for a long time, is really, it's about confidence of people. So, and people within the system. And now that there was actually, it's going to happen, it's happened, and now it's about the process of that gave a lot of confidence. Now, so really Brexit is I think has been reflected in the market. It's a bit like the stock market. It gets reflected into the information that's out there. So really now, COVID-19, hot on everybody's topic. That's why we're webinaring now. We're not in the same room or touching or high-fiving. And so, what are you seeing? How is COVID-19 is affecting the buying process, and how has it affected the market you're seeing dealing with people buying currently? And I'd like to separate that out for everybody for residential people buying. So that would be mums and dads, etc., just normally moving home. And then I would like to ask that for the investor side of it as well.
Yeah. Well, look, there's no shying away from it. Yes, volumes have dropped currently. That's very understandable, and in a way to be expected. We want people to follow government guidance, really, which is that home buyers and renters, so these are people that are moving into houses and and so on, they should delay their house move until we're out of lockdown where possible. If, however, you've exchanged contracts or it's unavoidable, the move, if you are a home mover, then you can move as long as you take into account government guidelines on social distancing. So if you're moving into a property and somebody's self-isolating in there, you're discouraged from doing that move. You should try and delay the move, maybe agree it with the solicitors and with the other parties in the transaction. So that's the sort of traditional moving in a chain where you are actually physically moving house. For the investor, it is different. That there's no government law to say you cannot buy a property or you cannot sell a property. We do encourage everybody, however, to follow government guidance. So looking at the investor, what can they do in terms of buying a property? They can still progress the transaction. We can still complete the transaction, depending on if it is a chain, it may be difficult to do that. However, many transactions, you're buying vacant property, there isn't a chain involved, and the property can still go through.
Yeah.
So there is a differential. So it is much easier to transact if you're an investor in the current situation. Absolutely.
And again, just to explain to a lot of people on there, that's because a lot of the times we as investors are dealing with vacant property a lot of the time. But also one of the questions that comes up with regard to, well, how are, when you guys do searches, so in the actual property buying process, you do searches, which are environmental searches, local searches, obviously to look at the property from a legal perspective, covering, I guess, the investor's risk, and having that information, which is crucial for any purchase or acquisition. So one of the questions is that how, if local authorities aren't working, how are you able to do searches then?
Well, it will depend. I mean, we have a certain amount of cases where they're already progressing. We've got the searches in, and that isn't a factor. However, if you're starting off, let's say you were to start off a transaction today, and it's a great opportunity. You want to make sure you secure that property, come what may. It's too good an opportunity to miss for you. You can consider things such as a search insurance, which is something to indemnify you as a buyer should anything come up on the searches. These insurances are fairly modest in cost. They actually cost less than doing the searches. Which
how much would that be, Andrew? Just for everybody.
Typically under £100 for a search insurance. Typically, it will depend on the value of the property. The reason those are reasonably priced is because insurance companies aren't silly. They will factor in the risk, and the risk is generally quite low. You don't tend to find issues on many searches, although we do recommend as lawyers acting for you that you do have searches carried out. So, but it is it is something that can be done if you are if you're a cash buyer. Definitely, it's within your decision making process. If you've got a mortgage lender, we would need to check with the lender. There is a handbook that we can check, and then that will tell us whether for a particular lender will they accept search insurance on the purchase or not. So it may be out of your hands if the lender does not allow search insurance, but it is something in our armoury which could be used if there is a deal that you need to get over the line. However, starting a deal now, there's every possibility now that by the time we get out of lockdown and we're past the worst of the COVID situation, your transaction will be nicely placed to then complete soon after that. So you can progress matters in the meantime, and certainly we're encouraging our team to keep the wheels turning with all their matters where possible.
And I think that's a really good point there. Things are still progressing. I think is the ultimate thing.
Yeah.
And I might say progressing from an investor's perspective. I think if you're looking at a deal, and this is how when we coach our mentees and the clients who come through, is if a deal is a deal today, it's still a deal. Does that make sense? And I think this prospect of where when should I buy? When is the perfect time to buy? There isn't a perfect time to buy, and I think people get completely obsessed from being an investor that I have to wait until the market's at its best. Well, in actual fact, with unconfidence that's around at the moment, I already know of a few people already. One of our mentors, he was negotiating a deal that was in the region of 300,000, and now he's been able to knock sort of £75,000 off the price of it. And that's not necessarily just because of COVID. It's actually because of the situation around the people selling it, which has been affected by COVID, but it's not COVID directly. So in actual fact, that unconfidence that there is around is actually an opportunity. But what I think, to summarize what you were saying there is, if the deal stacks today, you can still progress, you can still go through the searches, you can still go through the legal process, etc. And if the only limitation is really from a surveyor, for example, and you said I think they do, some lenders are doing desktop valuations, but obviously that's probably not a fair commentary on all of the lenders, absolutely not. But there are ways around that process, including desktop valuations. But get the legals going, working. People are going to be in a situation at the moment where they want that cash in the bank from selling an asset. But if the deal stacks up today, then you can still progress. And even if it's a case of the last bit of it in 2 to 3 months' time, then a surveyor goes to have a look around, and then that acquisition process is completed in a short period of time. And you're not waiting for the whole backlog of queue of other people who have now turned up saying, I want the deal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're certainly seeing clients that are, seizing opportunities, should we say. We are seeing some cases where there's a little bit of a drop in price to try and encourage the thing along, should we say. And so, I wouldn't like to say it's a buyer's market, it's a seller's market. I think, obviously, if you're a buyer, you're a cash buyer. you're going and you've got an appetite to invest, you're going to be able to get a good deal in the current climate. If you're a seller and you've got a good product, then you're going to have to maybe take a little bit of a drop to get a quick sale over the line. So I think in terms of your transactional levels, yes, there's been a drop, but we are seeing people coming into the market, seeing opportunities.
Yeah.
With stock markets and so on, they always say invest. If you buy cheap,
Buy low, sell high.
That's it. So you've got to. Obviously, it's just what we're seeing. It's not. It's in terms of investment. Obviously, everybody has to make their own decision for them and their families, and that's for their own judgment call. All we can do is tell you what we're seeing, in our client base and people we're talking to, in Manchester and Northwest, and we obviously have a London office as well and a Liverpool office, so we are seeing similar sorts of activity down there.
Well, and again, I think it's just a bit of an insight as to what you're seeing. You kind of, it's a bit like we can make assumptions and from afar, but actually you're in amongst that process. So actually, hearing that from you is really important for everybody, who's listening live, and it's really, really insightful. So I appreciate that. So from your side, and the question is, how are investors, or more importantly, how are JMW with regard to the buying process? There's a couple of things here. How are you overcoming the sluggishness of it, and also, for example, like people can't sign things physically. So what are you doing? I mean, I think we spoke previously, and you've got things like, when do you do exchange and completion now? What would your advice be around that? What are you doing there from a JMW perspective? And what are you advising clients?
Well, in terms of the exchange and completion, if you've already just taking a back step, if you have exchanged already and you exchanged before this COVID-19 situation, then you may still be on course to complete your transaction. If you hit a bit of an issue with the lender, or if you hit a bit of an issue with the property you're moving into has got somebody self-isolating or whatever, parties in the transaction are encouraged to try and delay the transaction till it's to a slightly later point. But if not, then the matter can still transact and can still complete. Most law firms, their staff are working in the main remotely, and they're still able to transact, still able to send funds, receive funds, pay off mortgages, receive mortgages. We're fully operational, call it.
Good.
So that's good. So that's your people that have exchanged. People that haven't yet exchanged. So if we're speaking to clients today and they're keen to transact, we would be saying to them, look, there's lots of variables out there at the moment, and we would encourage you to do an exchange and completion together. So in other words, do it on the same day. So line up everything possible so that there's no stone left unturned. You get to the day of completion and you exchange complete it together. So nobody's bound into that transaction until the day it's done, so that nobody's left contractually exposed to any anything that can go wrong. Lots of things that can go wrong anyway. Leaving COVID out of it. So it just takes the sting out of it. If there are a lot of new build developers, they like clients to exchange contracts nice and early, so before the property is even built on occasion. So in those situations, what the developers are doing is they're giving buyers a COVID contract clause to look at. So those clauses would say, if you can't complete because you've lost your job, because you can't get a mortgage due to COVID, then we'll let you off the contract effectively. So
and utilising that, Andrew, the COVID-19 clause relative to, obviously, I guess the if you're unable to, so that's from a buyer's perspective. So is that a tool that people on this call can actually discuss with you in order to actually put that in the contract? So, for example, if I secured a deal at 100,000, I could put a COVID clause in there, obviously subject to Does that make sense? My situation remaining positive. Does that make sense? And if anything happens negative, there's the ability to put that clause in. Is that a tool that we could use, with discussing it with you, like adding that in?
Potentially. Obviously, putting a COVID clause in lends itself to situations where you have a period between exchange and completion. So it depends on the type of property you're buying, and obviously the sellers and their lawyer would need to agree that clause. So if you're a buyer, you can propose this. You might say, look, we want to complete in a month. We're in a slightly uncertain situation in society currently.
Yeah.
We would like a COVID clause in, and there's various types of clauses covering different types of situations. So that could be proposed, or the alternative, as I alluded to before, you go for a simultaneous exchange and completion, which sort of takes the risk out of it. But if you were, every client is different, every deal is different, every seller, every property is different. So you have to look at it and weigh up what's the best for the client, what's in your client's best interests. So if we're acting for the investor, we'd talk to them, get a sense of where they're at in terms of finances, mortgages. If they're a cash buyer, do they want to get this property in quickly, or do they want more of a delay in taking it in? So you'd look at creating the tools for the right job.
And so really, again, highlighting to everybody on this, having and I think it was a new one for me, adding in COVID-19 clauses relative to facilitating or helping me protect myself as an investor, or structure the deal in a way that actually, allows me to control it in a better environment. Do you know what I mean? It's a crazy environment, but it allows me, as long as I agree it with the seller, I wouldn't even know that if I hadn't talked to you to see if that was a possibility, And so this is my whole point to everybody, is key members of your power team, like Andrew, like with JMW, always understanding when, being adaptable in key circumstances like now, and understanding that actually you can close a deal subject to a COVID clause, subject to a survey, subject to, again, it's just so, I didn't even know that myself until I spoke with you the other day. So again, really appreciate these tips. And these are the tools and key members of your power team that you need to have in order to be, as I say, adaptable and successful as an investor. So I think we've actually got some really good interactions here and some questions. So if you don't mind, we'll do it live. Is that okay?
Go on, hit me with it, Chris. I'll do my best for you.
So what we've got is a really good one here. You can probably see on the screen. We've got
all right. Hello,
Jeffery from Hong Kong. He's gone, is there any point in holding back buying any investment property in the UK?
Well, look, it's down to you spotting or you seeing the right opportunity. If you see an opportunity that you feel is good for you and your family, one that you feel gives you good return and you want to see it through, you can certainly start that process. Whether you complete it within the COVID climate, who knows? Because we don't know how long it's going to go on for. However, a typical transaction, it might take 4 weeks, it might take 8, 12 weeks. So, you'd be encouraged, if you want to do the deal, instruct us. You're not going to be committed to buying it until you exchange contracts, and we can certainly drive the process forward for you. You can be trying to do searches, looking at the contracts, raising inquiries of the seller's solicitors, getting responses back. So these are all things, as you say, and that you alluded to earlier, Chris. It might be that if you need a mortgage, depending on which mortgage company you want, some have restricted their products, and valuers, for certain lenders are not going out. So that could be a sort of slowing factor. But obviously the mortgage area isn't something we advise on. I think you might be having somebody in on that.
Correct. And I think that's a good feed in on Thursday. So for everybody watching, we have the senior BDM from What's Commercial, a very good friend of mine, Mark, who is going to be coming on and giving a very clear update on what finance is available, how the market has been affected. And obviously this is why this week has been very much a power team conversation around, when we're buying, we obviously need to understand our financial position with capital, with potential lending options, how's bridging been affected. And I think, one of the key points is to say your legal side and your finance side actually, go hand in hand, especially in the buying process. So again, yeah, appreciate that. So on Thursday at 1 o'clock, we're going to be having that discussion on the SO experience. One of the things I wanted to say, Andrew, was I think another thing is, speeding up in this time where you can't do wet contracts. You've implemented digital signing of documentation to help with this environment, which again has the benefit of speed. Can you explain what you've done there?
Yeah, well, we internally we've created our own digital signature, so we can get things moving remotely as your lawyers. So if if we need to order mortgage funds and so on, in terms of the essential documents that you as an investor would need to sign, typically you might need to sign a contract. In those cases, you can sign your contract and scan back and give authority for us to sign on your behalf. So these are all tools that can be used. In terms of mortgage documents, most lenders still want a wet ink signature. So if you are an investor, you're abroad, or if you're remote from us here in Manchester, you would typically be sent the document. You'd have to sign it, scan it back to us, and then send it back to us. So there's still, for most territories, there's still a postal service, courier service. We're receiving documents every day from UK and abroad. So, but in terms of progressing in the meantime, the digital signatures, authorities to exchange, those are all good things which enable us to progress.
Yeah, no, it's great. And again, sort of, I've got something another one here, which is from Helena in Australia. Are you seeing opportunities in the market? And I think the way you can comment on that is not necessarily from an investor's perspective, but are you seeing, you've already commented on it, but you're seeing other investors actually moving forward in this environment, even with the lockdown?
Yeah, well, hello, Helena. Thank you for your question. We're seeing, as I alluded to before, clients that have perhaps, we've had a couple of instances where clients have actually put something on hold when this first happened, but now we're several weeks in, they've maybe renegotiated the price slightly, and that's convinced them, well, hold on, that's a good deal. I'm going to progress matters. We're seeing some renegotiation on prices, which again suggests that people are doing deals out there. And certainly things that are coming to market are fresh. They might already be reflecting that there's a little bit of incentive needs to be given there to a buyer to crack on at this current situation.
And the summary, I think, I'm writing notes down is if it's a deal, it's a deal. It doesn't matter, relative to the market. And I think having somebody like yourselves, with that experience of with the negotiation aspect, dealing with the seller solicitors, and having COVID-19 clauses at our disposal, I think it's just really important. You've got to have the right people around you, which includes yourself, and that's why you've been working with a lot of our investors and over the years. So it's an absolute pleasure. We've got a really good question here, which is from Tim, and he's saying, why should I use JMW compared to a local solicitor?
Hello, Tim. We'd love you to use JMW. I mean, we are, we know the market. We're on the panel for most mortgage lenders out there. So what that means is that we, on a lot of products that you'll be looking at, if you are using a mortgage, we can act for you and your mortgage lender. There will be certain mortgage lenders that must have their own lawyers, and we would represent you. But in the main, we have lots of partners here. Typically, you need more than 5 partners to be on a lot of panels. So we can fulfill that side of it. So that makes it a little bit more streamlined for you. And obviously, we bring with us lots of years of experience in the market, transacting for investors and homeowners. We'd like to think we give a good cost-effective package, and hopefully a nice service with it.
So one of the things, again, from an investor's perspective, and again, why we haven't just got you on board for any other reason, one tip that I really would like to give to any investors is at the end of the day, when you're dealing with certain lenders, whether it be bridging lenders or other lenders that are available to you, a lot of the requirements in them have for example, a minimum of 5 partners in a solicitor firm, and that's from the finance perspective. And what we're seeing with a lot of investors is they go along with, for example, the source's own local solicitor who they know round the corner in Milton Keynes or wherever it may be. And they go down this route of going through the legal process, and then suddenly it gets to engaging with the lender, and the lender says, oh no, sorry, you can't use this solicitor firm because they are not a minimum of 5 partners. And we've seen that with probably a handful of investors where unfortunately then they are then caught in the crossfire because they didn't understand it, the source didn't understand it, and the situation. And that's why we engaged with you, because we know that you cover so many lenders. We know that you've got a massive, team around you. We use JMW for our contracts. We use JMW for our acquisitions as well here at Sourcing Investments. And so, it eradicates those potential issues. And that's why, again, with that service, but more importantly, you actually have, the 5 partners and more to be able to not have any of these issues and have to double pay that an investor would if they went down and used a local Johnny solicitor.
Yeah, it can be a bit frustrating. You get so far down the transaction and then find you need to bring another law firm in at a late stage. They're obviously going to start all over again, looking through everything. And they might find that there's something that wasn't done originally that should have been done. And that might not be the fault of the solicitor you originally instructed. It's just that, if 3 lawyers or 2 lawyers look at the same thing, they might all find something different to ask and something different to me. So it's just one of those things, isn't it? So yes, if you can, hopefully if you come to us, you've got the best chance of having that dual representation if the lender allows it, which means we can act for the lender and act for you, and there isn't two taxi meters running at the same time. But look, there are lenders out there that want two lawyers on a transaction, and that'll have to be. But we'll hopefully give you that chance of making it as cost effective as possible as well.
And just for everybody, a typical non-complicated deal. What are your kind of price points for a residential conveyance?
We'll typically start around the 750 mark, something like that. So what I'd recommend, if you've got a transaction that you're looking at, you want us to give a quote or give you some guidance on prices, because it isn't just our fees. There's the searches, the land registry fees, and the other thing is obviously your stamp duty. So you need to just factor that in. Stamp duty typically on a residential starts, if you buy something from above £40,000, you're going to stamp duty starts becoming a potential factor for you. So obviously there are some transactions below that level, but if you can buy it, if you're buying above that, then you might need your stamp duty to be quoted. So what I'd recommend is, Chris, you've got the access through the website, and send an inquiry through, and we'll be happy to give a non-obligation quote. So the fact you come to us for a quote doesn't mean you've instructed us. It just means you've found out what our prices are, which is
No, I appreciate it. And as I say, this is on, for everybody who's uninitiated, this is on the Sourcing Investments Power Team dashboard, which all investors have access to. So in amongst the solicitor panel, you've got very much all of your key members of the power team in order to transact, and all of them have been verified, and more importantly, we've worked with them for many years, and we work with them very, very closely. So you can access, as I say, direct to Andrew through the power team dashboard, and as I say, just I think that we had a question here. How do I get in contact with you? I think we sort of covered that. And just as a final thing, what I wanted to show everybody that this is sort of live. This is we're all about adaptability. So what we've been doing is making some notes here of what Andrew's been saying, and just as a sort of a recap, which hopefully you'd agree with Andrew with a lot of it, is we've got impacts. Our volumes have been affected, but really for chains in residential movers predominantly. Obviously, with the investors themselves, which is obviously applicable to a lot of the people on the call here, you can still very much progress, typically because you're buying stuff or properties without any tenants in place, etc. But if there are tenants, obviously that may affect. But that's something that you're going to have to look at a case by case basis.
it won't affect if you're buying a property with tenants in situ. It's very straightforward. You're simply passing the deeds from the current owner to you,
Okay.
And the tenancy will remain unaffected. It's only really if you're you're looking to perhaps move a different tenant in during that period. It might be a bit trickier depending on the isolation situation.
Understand.
Yeah.
So investors have got very much used search insurance, search indemnity insurance, which can come in at around about £100. And again, that's obviously lender specific. So again, it's not a blanket. It has to be a case by case basis, but it's something that investors on the call should be noting down and asking that question when in contact with you when they're going through potentially looking at a property. One of the tips, I think, what we're saying is with a bit of we will discuss more with the finance brokers on Thursday. But if the LTVs, so that's loan to values, have dropped slightly, then as creative investors, you very much can look to raise finance locally, so capital locally. So if LTVs have dropped from 70 down to 60, you'll need to go and find an extra 10% if using a lender. So again, don't just sit there and moan, be creative, and more importantly, make it happen. And really, I think here what we said is if it's a deal, it's a deal. Does that make sense? So whether it's today, whether it's in 10 years' time, if it's a deal today and you're taking a long-term approach on it, then it's a deal today. So, at the end of the day, make sure it stacks up from that perspective. Solutions, same day exchange and completion, which is what you guys are trying to push to mitigate any long-standing risk. And more importantly, which I think is a great tip today, which I'm just highlighting in red and boxing it off, is a COVID-19 clause in the contract, and that should be done on a case-by-case basis as well. But it's another tool that I don't think I've heard of very much so. So I really appreciate that tip. So investors, please, when you're talking with Andrew or you're looking at acquiring a property, that should be something that you should have a discuss. And more importantly, again, just pointing out, if it's a deal today, it's a deal. So, do not just wait. At the end of the day, when is the right time to buy? The right time to buy is now, but more importantly, make sure you've got the skills, the support, and to be able to assess a deal, know what the market environment is, and say if it works, it works. And that's what we're here to do with SI and all of our power teams. But thank you so much for your time, Andrew. Really appreciate it. If you want to get in contact with Andrew, please, you can register on SI for a free trial, go into the power team dashboard and contact Andrew through there. And more importantly, I hope that Manchester United do come out of their doldrums and actually start performing and start winning the league again. But I think that'll be a few years, right? But with everybody, please please click on the subscribe button below. That's on YouTube, Facebook. Thank you so much for everybody. We've had some good questions here today, and join us on Thursday with a very, very clear update from the finance brokers from SI. Which is, them very well. Watts Commercial, Andrew, so you know them as well. But thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And everybody, please keep safe and take care.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.